Om Aim Mrigashira Nakshatraye Namaha. Namaste everyone. So today we are going to talk about Mrigashira Nakshatra. And actually this Saturday we are going to have also a proper 3-hour long webinar about Mrigashira Nakshatra and its mysteries, its symbolism. Also we'll be doing study cases and looking into the anatomy of the nakshatra itself to see its padas and to see its sensitive points and sensitive degrees. So if you would like to join me on Patreon, and you have the link below. So Mrigashira Nakshatra itself is ruled by Soma. Soma is a fascinating deity and a fascinating concept in Vedic philosophy. So Soma sometimes was addressed as the moon god and sometimes was addressed as more formless deity. The deity which was frequently addressed as being the fluidity and the taste and the sweetness and bliss of everything that is present. In fact, Soma was also addressed as the substance that invigorates and gives energy to the gods, that intoxicates them. And who are these gods? These are our own inner spiritual powers inside us. And you say that this Soma is nothing else but this energy of bliss that is getting generated within us whenever we are focused deeply in meditation. Because Soma itself, sometimes was compared to a plant as well. And if you want to get a juice or elixir from the plant, you need to press it first. Similarly, we need to sometimes press our mind, add a pressure to it, add a discipline to it, focus it in one point so we can get this fulfillment, this elixir of life. Because after all, the Shakti or the power of Mrigashira Nakshatra is the power to bring us fulfillment, Prinana Shakti. And sometimes, with Mrigashira Nakshatra, we may have this tendency to seek this fulfillment constantly left and right, in these countless sensory pleasures of the world, but we still fail to find it. Because the true fulfillment and true contentment can be found only right here, right now, in the present moment. And that is also what Mrigashira Nakshatra is trying to teach us, that the fulfillment is never far away, it's never somewhere there, it's actually right here in your own mind. That's why this Soma, this elixir of the divinity, is at the same time represented by Moon God, who represents our own mind. Mrigashira Nakshatra is frequently addressed as a star of search, constant searching. You see, the name itself, Mrigashira, means a head of a deer. And it's a very symbolic thing. If you would see a deer, maybe in a grass or in a forest, you will see just its head and its horns, how it's constantly searching something. And similar is our mind, you see, it constantly searches something through this forest of sensory experience of this world. And its active mental energy is constantly, active and expanding, like the horns of a deer, which is a beautiful metaphor here. And this is why most likely a deer itself was considered in Vedic philosophy as a symbol of actual desire. Because deer is a very beautiful animal, very attractive animal, but it's the most fickle one of all of them as well. The most shy of all of them. It constantly jumps from one place to another. This is why Mrigashira Nakshatra natives, they're always on search. They're always looking for something. But the thing is that they don't always know what exactly they're looking for. And is this something that they're looking for hidden in material world or in some spiritual experience? And due to that, they may, end up sometimes, like I like to call it, they tend to dig, for water in 10 different places, but they never actually get to water. Because their own attention is too scattered into many different places. And this is what I vividly remember that my Gurudev told me, that if you want, to get to water, dig in one place, because you have, simply speaking, bigger chances that you'll actually get to it versus digging in 10 different places at the same time. So this is sometimes, what is the problem of Mrigashira Nakshatra, is that it's always searching, but it's hard for it to actually find something, to find fulfillment in something, and, to stay dedicated to it fully, to find the actual fulfillment. And this is why, if you are having your self-displacement, especially moon in Mrigashira Nakshatra, keep in mind that it will be very helpful for you to just choose one path, decide on something versus doing 10 different things at the same time. It will be easier for you, and you will find more fulfillment too. This is why when moon dwells in Mrigashira Nakshatra, it's actually quite restless. The mind itself can become very restless. Which you see, for certain types of jobs or career directions, it can be very supportive. It can be great for people who are into research, into journalism, or people, who are just supposed to do 10 things at the same time and multitasking all the time. This is where this moon can be very helpful for a person. But the thing is, that with this constant restless energy of the mind, which is jumping like this deer from one place to another, constantly changing its desires, it's sometimes very hard to focus and to find, a proper sense of direction in life. That's the biggest challenge of that nakshatra, really. This is why you see, if you read some hymns in the Vedas, when they are praising Soma as this bliss-giving, energy within us, this energy that is really representing the flow of fulfillment within us. They're frequently addressing their Soma as Indu. Indu literally means a point, a single point. So they're addressing him that he must be pressed and he must be single-pointed. Same is with our mind. It must be pressed, it must be brought to the present moment, forcibly if needed, and focused on a single point, because this is the only, condition in which the Soma, the fulfillment, truly starts to flow. When the mind stops jumping, stops losing its life force and energy on just jumping all the time, and actually, finds itself rejuvenated from inside. But this is something you can experience only in meditation. And of course, if you're meditating daily or doing yoga daily, especially Kriya Yoga, it can become your reality as well. This is why for natives who especially have a moon there in Mrigashira Nakshatra, I would highly recommend do meditate daily. Find a way to bring your mind back into the present moment, because this is exactly what your mind needs to learn in this lifetime. And since all the nakshatras of Mars are, you see, placed in a very specific way, because always half of them is in one Rashi, in earthly Rashi, that's the first half, and half of the nakshatra is in Airy Rashi. In case of Mrigashira, half of it dwells in Taurus, half is in Gemini. This is why you see this nakshatra can be also quite indecisive in nature. It's very hard sometimes for this native to take some decision, because they may feel like they're always, with one leg, in one realm, with one leg in another realm. And very frequently it turns out to be the inner conflict between, finding material fulfillment and spiritual fulfillment. And they may actually perceive it as conflict, they may perceive it like it's very hard to integrate these two concepts into their lives. And I have noticed this to be especially true for people who have, any planet placed exactly on this 0 degree of Gemini, on this exactly halfway, So this is why you see, for these natives, they need to be very careful just so their own mind is not talking them into, constant doubt. Because they may be full of doubts, and this is why it's so hard to take a decision. If you're doubting yourself, your intuition, if you're doubting whether this or that solution is good or bad, in the end, you actually end up just procrastinating things and never doing anything, really. This is why for that nakshatra it's very, very important also to develop this focus and a sort of courage to just, do whatever you feel. Because ultimately it's a nakshatra of Mars, so of course if moon or ascendant is dwelling here, it becomes also a very important topic here to just control your life force and don't let it, be just exhausted by constant doubting and constant thinking. But instead of that, rather make any decision and make a mistake and then just move forward. And remember, the power or Shakti of Mrigashira Nakshatra is Prinana Shakti, the power of fulfillment. You see, this nakshatra is always seeking for fulfillment. Whichever graha is there, whichever planet is dwelling there, it will always seek some sort of fulfillment. And you see, sometimes, and actually most often, when we are on the beginning, of our life, we tend to believe, or rather buy the belief of our society, that we will actually find this fulfillment when we get a nice car, great house, great wife, or we can even seek this fulfillment, in fact, in intoxication itself, because even that is represented by Mrigashira Nakshatra, the divine intoxication. But the thing is, that if you go through all these experiences, you get this great car, this great house, great wife, and you can be super rich. But sooner or later you will come to the point of realization that this is actually not enough. And you'll start to ask yourself, but where is more to that? Where is the meaning behind that? And that's always the case with Mrigashira Nakshatra. It constantly searches, for this deeper meaning of things. It constantly searches, for this flow of bliss. But especially if the planet is dwelling in Taurus portion of Mrigashira Nakshatra, sometimes it may just search it more, especially in these material pleasures, which at the end of the day will just end up, tiring the person and exhausting the person versus giving the actual bliss which the person is looking for. So if you have any planet there, and if you find in yourself this quality of constantly searching something, start asking yourself more frequently, what exactly are you searching for? And do you really think that you will find it in the outside? Because you see, that's the fun thing. As long as you are looking for fulfillment, it's almost guaranteed that you will not find it. Because as long as you are looking for fulfillment, you are literally affirming to yourself that you are not fulfilled now. You are affirming to yourself that you need something or somebody else in order to fulfill you or complete you. And this is why, Mrigashira Nakshatra just ends up to be so hungry for experiences sometimes and so full of desires, because you can never be full unless you realize that you are already full, right here, right now, in this present moment itself, which is the only moment in which you can really experience the true Soma, and when you can experience, the bliss coming from within you. And of course, since Mrigashira Nakshatra constantly searches for different types of experiences, its big weakness is search for pleasures. You see, there's nothing wrong with pleasure as long as you know that you are the one enjoying it and you don't end up being a slave of it. So remember that this is always the weakness here with Mrigashira Nakshatra. Fulfilling, your pleasures, your desires, and which may end up once again in keeping you sometimes for a little bit too long in your own comfort zone. So that is something very important to keep in mind and to ask yourself frequently, whether you are truly the one who is experiencing the pleasure, or is the pleasure actually controlling you. And Mrigashira Nakshatra, since like we already mentioned, deer itself represents the desires, the endless desires of the mind, can be sometimes full of desires. And you see, desire itself is not bad in itself, as long as you know what exactly do you want, and if you know all the consequences of that. The weakness of Mrigashira Nakshatra is that it is sometimes not concerned with the consequences. It just wants to get its desire fulfilled, and due to that it may end up changing its own desires very frequently. And once again, if you change your desires frequently, then what happens? You never really get enough time to fulfill any of those. So once again, I will probably repeat it many times throughout this video, but it is so important, if you have especially moon in Mrigashira Nakshatra, to learn how to control your mind, so it's not scattered, in all possible directions, and so it doesn't catches you up, in the world of illusion. Because you see, desires themselves can be very tricky. And there's actually a very beautiful story connected with that, which I would like to share with you. So you see, Mrigashira Nakshatra happens to be birth star of Mother Parvati, wife of Lord Shiva. And since Mother Parvati, she's always sitting next to Shiva on Kailash, and they're meditating together. You see, Parvati, having very curious and fickle mind herself, being Mrigashira native, she is always very curious about things. And one day she expressed this wish and desire to Lord Shiva. My dear Lord, I see there are devotees there in earthly realm who are praying to me. Please allow me to go to them, to spend some time with them, so I can bless them with my presence. And Lord Shiva, who of course knows past, present and future, he just smiled and he said, of course, you can go. So Parvati went, she left Kailash, she went in earthly realm, she spent time with her devotees. She was traveling from temple to temple because she's worshipped in many different places in this world. She spent a few years at the end. But then when she wanted to come back to Shiva, to Kailash, she realized that this entire time she actually forgotten the way, how to return. I remember this story frequently, whenever I talk about Mrigashira Nakshatra. I remember how my Gurudev told it many years ago on Mahashivaratri, because it's a very symbolic story. Also, sometimes when we are too focused on fulfillment of our desires, we actually end up to lose the way to ourselves somewhere on the way. So be sure that you always know what is your goal. Nothing else than that. And be sure that you don't lose it, from your horizon, and that you don't forget this way back, like Parvati did. Mrigashira is also very imaginative nakshatra, with very vivid imagination, creativity, sometimes powerful visions, or powerful, vivid dreams. Remember, it is said also that this Soma, or this nectar of bliss, which your own body can produce, can give you the access to different realms, can give you or bless you with some powerful vision. So Mrigashira Nakshatra natives, they are very, very creative. In fact, even, this head of a deer is a beautiful symbol of that. Because why the symbol of the nakshatra is just a head of a deer? Why it's called Mrigashira instead of being called just Mriga, or a deer? Because it's an indication here that here in this nakshatra, the mental and intellectual energy is very, very much concentrated just in the head. And the horns of a deer, represent, this imagination, these thoughts, which are just, emerging from the mind and spreading around. So it's a very creative nakshatra. But once again, it just needs to be very careful that it doesn't end up being too stuck just in the head, just in the mental energy. That's why any physical activities and being with nature, doing your yoga, or just, simply speaking, any physical exercise is very, very helpful for Mrigashira Nakshatra, just to feel more grounded and to ground this powerful mental energy. Mrigashira Nakshatra is also Mridu, or very gentle, very soft in nature, very easygoing, very non-violent. Soma, of all the gods, is addressed, in the biggest amount of times in the Vedas as Priya, the beloved one, a very dear one. You see, due to this very gentle nature of Mrigashira Nakshatra, which you can compare literally to a deer, which is such a gentle animal, these natives normally are very gentle by nature, especially if a soft graha is also there, like Venus, like maybe Mercury or Jupiter, ascendant or moon itself. So these natives are frequently very, very gentle, very non-violent, and actually gentleness and non-violence are frequently very important topics for them as well. But regardless how gentle it is, Mrigashira Nakshatra is very, very dynamic in nature. In fact, it's considered one of the best nakshatras for traveling due to that. Because remember, in the Kshatraya Mahadasha, Mrigashira is ruled by Mars. It's very active, very dynamic. This Soma, this fluid of bliss, which is present in our body, is also always addressed in Vedas as being very intense, powerful, purifying in nature, and very dynamic and efficient in its actions as well. So Mrigashira Nakshatra, due to that, also sometimes the mind is very restless with that nakshatra because it's very dynamic, very speedy. And this is, once again, one of the reasons why it's such a great nakshatra for traveling, and also why Mrigashira natives, they usually love to travel. And since non-violence is such an important quality for Mrigashira natives, you will actually find lots of activists with that nakshatra. Because they have enough of gentleness, and compassion within their hearts to want to do something either for society or for nature. Lots of people who are vegetarians, vegans, or fight for animals' rights, you will find with that nakshatra as well. So they have enough of, this gentleness and this compassion, this, how to say, more sophisticated energy within them to be very sensitive for the suffering of others. But at the same time, they are having this dynamic energy which actually allows them to, just do something about that and inspire others towards change as well. And this is why, or this is rather how, the energy of the nakshatra can be used in the most constructive way. Mrigashira Nakshatra is also always very connected with nature. You see, its symbol is animal, the wild animal, deer itself. And Soma itself was always considered this juice, this essence that is present within every plant. This is why normally for every Mrigashira native, well, in fact for everybody on this planet, but especially for Mrigashira native, it's the best to have vegetarian or vegan diet, as plant-based diet as possible. Because it will simply be more in tune with their own energies and will uplift their energy as well. And you'll frequently see, that having some type of connection with nature is very important for those natives. They are normally very sweet and gentle with animals, and they love, just going to the park, to the forest, and frequently they actually love gardening as well. And gardening, I would say, is one of the best activities for those natives because it really, helps them to be connected with nature, but at the same time to be very grounded, to take a little bit of this energy from your head and put it more, into actual action. And remember, this is one of the most compassionate and most sensitive nakshatras. In fact, it was Sri Aurobindo who beautifully described that this Soma that is described in Vedas represents nothing else but the power of the divine love itself. Divine compassion, unconditional love, which gives bliss to everybody, which makes us non-violent, which makes us gentle, same like Soma. You see, the name Soma itself comes from the word Saumya, gentle, sweet, kind, placid, and neutral. So So this is what Soma represents, and this is how we should attempt to make our mind, to make it always gentle and compassionate. And this is so fascinating, because if you would look how Yoga Tara of Mrigashira Nakshatra looks like, so the most prominent, let's say, celestial object, because it's not even a star, in the constellation of Mrigashira Nakshatra, it's actually Orion Nebula. I will actually show you right now this picture just so you can see it, because it's quite amazing. This picture of Orion Nebula is literally heart-shaped. It's in the shape of a heart. It's such a clear indication, from heavens what this nakshatra is actually about. It's about divine love and divine compassion, which is the only true fulfillment of the soul. So that's all from me for today about Mrigashira Nakshatra. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you would like to join us on 3-hour-long webinar dedicated to Mrigashira Nakshatra, you have the link below, so you can join us on Patreon or purchase later the recording. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time. Namaste.